hear me? I call all my righteous.
Welcome back, everyone. It's time for another deep dive.
Hey.
And today we're going to be looking at Psalm 4.
Okay.
One of the Psalms in the book of Psalms in the Hebrew Bible.
Right.
And we're going to take a deep dive into it and kind of see what's going on with this psalm.
Yeah.
What are some of the salient points? What are some of the things that we can glean from it today in the 21st century?
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about this one because, the Psalms, they're very interesting to me. I don't know about you, but
I completely agree. I think the Psalms are fascinating. They have so much variety and emotional depth.
Yeah.
I mean, you get everything in there, don't you?
Yeah, you get lament, you get praise, you get thanksgiving, you get all kinds of things in the Psalms.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
what do you think about the songs in general? I mean, what's your take on them?
Well, I think they're just so powerful because they're so real. They're not, they're not this sort of abstract theological treatise. They're really like cries from the heart. They're people wrestling with their faith, with their doubts, with their fears, their joys. It's all there. It's raw. It's honest. And I think that's what makes them so timeless and relatable.
Yeah, I think they're poetry.
Right.
I think they're written as poetry, and the interesting thing about poetry to me is that it says so much with very few words.
That's very true. Yeah, it's very condensed and it's very evocative, isn't it?
It is.
It uses imagery and metaphor, and it really speaks to us on a deeper level than just, prose sometimes can.
And we're going to be looking at Psalm 4, which is a relatively short psalm. It's only 8 verses long.
Okay.
But there's a lot packed in there, I think.
Right.
So let's just jump right in.
Yep.
So the first thing I want to point out is that there's a superscription at the beginning of Psalm 4.
Okay.
And it says, "For the director of music with stringed instruments, a psalm of David." Now, what do you make of that superscription?
Well, it's really interesting because it gives us a little glimpse into the original context of this song.
Right.
It tells us that it was intended to be set to music and performed with stringed instruments. So it's not just meant to be read silently on a page. Mm-hmm. It's meant to be heard, sung, experienced.
Yeah, like a song.
Exactly like a song.
A hymn.
A hymn, yeah.
Wow.
And then that phrase, a psalm of David, it connects it to this larger than life figure of King David, who, we know as a musician himself. He was a poet.
Right.
So it kind of adds this extra layer of meaning and authority to the psalm.
Yeah. So David, we should point out, was the second king of Israel.
Right.
And according to the Bible, he was a shepherd boy who killed the giant Goliath.
Yes.
And became very famous and very popular, and eventually became king.
A very dramatic life.
Yeah, very dramatic life, and wrote many of the Psalms.
He was also a very flawed character too, wasn't he?
Yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing about him, is that he's both this, heroic figure and this very flawed human being.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes him so relatable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because we're all flawed human beings.
Exactly.
So let's jump into the Psalm itself, and the first verse says this: "Answer me when I call to you, my righteous God. Give me relief from my distress. Have mercy on me and hear my prayer."
Wow.
So what's going on in that first verse?
Well, it's pretty clear right from the start that the psalmist is in trouble.
Yeah.
He's crying out to God for help.
Yeah.
He's feeling distressed. He's pleading for mercy. He needs God to hear his prayer. And it's the sense of urgency that comes through, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like an emergency.
Right. He's in desperate need.
911.
Yeah, exactly.
And notice that he addresses God as my righteous God.
Right.
So there's a relationship there.
There is this intimacy, this closeness. This is not some distant deity. This is a God that he knows and he has a personal relationship with.
Yeah, that he can appeal to.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's move on to verses 2 and 3. And it says, "How long will you people turn my glory into shame? How long will you love delusions and seek false gods? Know that the Lord has set apart his faithful servant for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him." So there's a shift there, isn't there?
Yeah, there's definitely a shift in tone.
Yeah.
Now he's addressing other people, and it seems like he's kind of accusing them of something.
Yeah, like they've done something wrong.
Yeah, they're turning his glory into shame. They're loving delusions. They're seeking false gods. And so there's this sense of, what are you doing?
Yeah, why are you doing this?
You're on the wrong path. You're straying from the true God. And it creates this really interesting tension in the psalm, doesn't it?
It does. It's almost like he's saying, I'm over here suffering.
Right.
And you guys are over there worshiping false gods. And
yeah, not taking it seriously.
really unfair.
And maybe there's even a hint of like jealousy there, They seem to be prospering while he's suffering.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then he says, know that the Lord has set apart his faithful servant for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him.
Right.
So he's kind of reminding them.
Yeah, he's reminding them and himself too, probably.
Yeah.
That he is the one who's chosen by God.
Right.
He is the one who's in right relationship with God.
Yeah, he's the faithful servant.
He is the faithful one.
Okay, so let's move on to verse 4. It says, tremble and do not sin when you are on your beds. Search your hearts and be silent.
That's interesting.
What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's kind of a call to introspection, isn't it?
Yeah, like he's telling them to.
Yeah, he's saying, okay, instead of
Think about what they're doing.
running after these false gods and these delusions, you need to stop.
Yeah.
You need to be still. You need to search your hearts. You need to tremble before the true God.
He says tremble.
Yeah, tremble, which suggests this awe and reverence and fear even.
Yeah, like you should be afraid.
Yeah, there's a healthy fear of God, which
Right.
is not about being terrified, but it's about recognizing his power and his holiness.
Yeah. So it's like a warning.
It's a warning. It's a call to wake up, to
Yeah.
take stock of your life,
Yeah.
to really examine your heart.
Okay, so verse 5 and 6. Offer the sacrifices of the righteous and trust in the Lord. Many, Lord, are asking, who will bring us prosperity? Let the light of your face shine on us.
Okay.
So now he's talking about sacrifices.
Right. So now he's shifting again. He's moving from this kind of introspection to more practical advice almost.
Yeah.
He's saying, okay, offer the sacrifices of the righteous and trust in the Lord.
Yeah.
And then he acknowledges this very human desire for prosperity.
You're right.
Many are asking who will bring us prosperity. But then he connects it to God. He's saying, let the light of your face shine on us.
So he's saying basically if you want prosperity,
Yeah.
trust in God.
Trust in God. Offer
Yeah.
the right sacrifices.
Right.
Live a righteous life.
Yeah, do the right things and then God will
And then God will bless you with prosperity.
give you prosperity.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's a very common theme in the Psalms. This idea that God rewards the faithful with blessings, with prosperity, with peace.
Okay, and then verse 7. You have filled my heart with greater joy than when their grain and new wine abound. That's an interesting verse.
It is. It's a very evocative image, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's talking about the joy of a bountiful harvest.
Right.
When the grain and the new wine are overflowing.
Right.
And he's saying that the joy that he feels from God
Yeah.
is even greater than that.
Is greater than...
And then the joy of a bountiful harvest.
Wow. So he's saying that the joy that you get from God is even better than, having all the food and drink that you could ever want.
Right. It's a deeper joy.
Yeah.
It's a more lasting joy. It's a spiritual joy.
Wow. Okay, and then the last verse, verse 8. In peace I will lie down and sleep for you alone. Lord, make me dwell in safety. So what do you think is going on there?
Well, I think it's a beautiful expression of trust and peace.
Yeah.
After all of this turmoil and angst and questioning,
Right.
he comes to this place of rest.
He can lie down and sleep peacefully because he knows that God is watching over him.
Yeah, it's like he's finally at peace.
He's found his peace. He's found his security in God.
So what do you think is the main message of Psalm 4?
Well, I think there are several layers to it,
Okay.
but I think one of the key messages is that even when we're surrounded by chaos and doubt and suffering,
Right.
we can find peace and security in God.
And God.
Yeah, by turning to him, by trusting in him, by seeking his guidance.
Yeah, and by offering the right sacrifices.
Right, by living a righteous life, by aligning our hearts with his will.
Yeah, and I think there's also this message of contrasting the faithful servant with those who are seeking false gods.
Yes, absolutely. It's a reminder to stay true to the one true God,
Yeah.
to not be swayed by the temptations of the world.
Yeah, to resist the delusion.
To resist the delusions, yeah. And to remember that ultimately true fulfillment and joy come from God.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a great message.
And it makes me wonder, if we were to set Psalm 4 to music today, what kind of music would it be?
Would it be a lament? Would it be a song of praise? Would it be a rock anthem? A ballad? What emotions would it evoke in you?
That's a great question. I think it would be a very powerful piece of music,
It would be.
whatever it was. So I think we're going to leave it there for today, but I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Psalm 4.
Yeah, me too. It's always fascinating to explore these ancient texts and see how they still speak to us today.
Yeah, and I hope you'll join us next time for another deep dive.
Absolutely. Until then, keep diving.
All right.
distress. Show me your sweet grace. Let your mercy fall in my darkest place.